Beautiful. All right, gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us tonight. Chazakim Bruchim, Mr. Arunia, Chazak U'Baruch for hosting us. Yizku Mitzvot. May this house always be full of bracha and simcha and happiness. And the zchut of our learning, B'ezras Hashem, we'd like to dedicate today's learning Le'ilui Nishmat Menashe ben Yaakov of blessed memory, Titi bat Yaakov, and also Shahnaz bat Eshrat. May their neshamot go higher and Gan Eden. Also, we'd like to learn for the complete and speedy recovery of Yaakov Yisrael, Avraham ben Chana, Esther, Helen. May he have refuah shlema b'toch shar cholei Yisrael. And B'ezras Hashem, let us begin. So, in this week's Parashat, we know that this is the moment of truth where Yosef goes ahead and reveals himself to his brothers. He tells them, "This is me," meaning the one that you were so worried about, the one that you were wondering where he is after all of this time. It's me, and he reveals himself. Now, I saw an incredible midrash. Amazing. Every year, you go through the parasha, you learn something new that you never knew before. Doesn't matter how many times you did it in the past. So the parasha says, the midrash Tanchuma says over here, that when Yosef went ahead and revealed himself to the brothers, so it says that they couldn't answer him because they were scared. They were scared of him. Kinivhalu mipanav. They were terrified by the sight that they saw. Now, I want to share with you exactly what the Midrash Tanchuma tells us. It says the following. It says, "Velo yachol Yosef li'itapek." Hello, welcome. It says, "Velo yachol Yosef li'itapek." Yosef can't hold himself in. He has to reveal himself to his brothers. So he reveals himself. Says the Midrash Tanchuma, when he revealed himself to his brothers, welcome, everybody died. Literally, everybody dropped dead. Parcha nishmatam. We're talking now, welcome gentlemen, we're talking about the idea that in this week's parasha, Yosef revealed himself to his brothers. And the idea is that it says they were terrified. So much so, says the Midrash Tanchuma, that they literally dropped dead. All the brothers dropped dead. Midrash Tanchuma says they dropped dead. Their neshamot left their bodies. Amazing Midrash. And then their neshamot came back. The question that the Midrash wants to know is, that the Mefarshim want to know is, why is it that they had to die? Why is it that they had to just drop dead literally and their neshamot left and then they came back? So Maran HaChida, the great Rabbi Chaim Yosef David Azulai, answers this question in a bunch of different ways. He explains something very interesting. He says, first of all, he wanted them to see that miracles happen with Yosef. That Yosef is somebody that throughout this whole time in Egypt, when he was sold as a slave and when he was taken to the house of Potiphar and he was in jail and everything that he went through, that whole entire time he remained a tzaddik. So much so that miracles just happened in front of them. Look, they all died, their neshamot were hovering around, and boom, they came back inside. So now, what does Yosef tell them? V'higadetem le'avi et kol kvodi. Go back to Israel, tell my father everything that you just saw happen over here. Tell my father, I'm still a tzaddik. I'm still a righteous person. So that he has that awareness. So that's number one. The reason that they had to just leave their bodies and come back is in order that they should experience firsthand a miracle that happened in the presence of Yosef, to understand that Yosef retained his status of a tzaddik. That's number one. Guys, there's amazing stuff over here, courtesy of Mr. Haruni and the Chavod. Go take a little something, amazing stuff. Now, I think one incredible lesson just from that point made by the Chida is that what you see is that sometimes a person feels like he's all alone in the world. You know, you stand there and you pray to Hashem and you feel like you're talking to a wall. You feel like there's nothing, no one's listening, no one's here. But meanwhile, Hashem was with you every single step of your journey. And you might not have felt it, you might not have seen it, but it's the reality. Look, 22 years later, completely disconnected from his father, but not disconnected from being the man he's supposed to become. And that miracle takes place right away. Amazing idea. You think you're all alone, but Hashem is smiling at you, saying, no, I'm right with you here all along. You're in jail. Somebody accuses you of all kinds of things. Whatever you went through, I was there the whole time. Very important thing to think about, because often enough we feel like we're all alone. That's number one. Says Maran Achida another incredible point. He says the reason that they died, Baruch haba, welcome. Sasso, there's amazing stuff over here. Take. So another incredible point that the Chida says over here is that the reason that they had to die, again, we're learning now that when Yosef revealed himself to his brothers, all the brothers dropped dead on the spot. Literally died, Midrash tells us. And then the neshamot came back in the bodies. So another reason the Chida says that this took place was out of incredible amounts of embarrassment. They were so embarrassed. Now, why was this so important for them to go through? Because it says that if somebody does an averah, somebody does a sin, and he's embarrassed, he's ashamed because of that sin that he did, Hashem forgives him for all his sins. Welcome. Amazing. So Hashem forgives him for all of his sins. Why? Because when a person suffers such incredible embarrassment, that itself is the biggest atonement. The sheer embarrassment, the shame that he feels, that's the atonement for the person. So they were so scared when they heard that. They couldn't believe the shame that was what we did to you. It's so shameful that they died. And now says Yosef, you guys came back. You came back in your bodies. You're not the same person anymore. You went through embarrassment. You went through suffering of shame that you had. Now you came back. It's all done.
Two brothers?
But yeah, you guys died and you came back.
All of them?
They died. When they heard about Yosef, when Yosef revealed himself, they died. Midrash says. And they came back. So says Yosef to them, you guys went through this because now you're different people. You're not the same people anymore. You were cleansed of everything. That's what he was telling them. So therefore he says, it's all over now. You don't have to worry about it anymore. He was comforting them. By the way, where do we learn this concept from? It says that the king Shaul, many years later, he wanted to stay the king, but Shemuel told him that you cannot be the king anymore of the Jewish nation. You know why? Because there was an opportunity for you to erase Amalek completely, and you didn't. You left the sheep, you left the ladies, and you left the sheep, and you left the king. King Agag of Amalek was left overnight, and then that one night he had relations with somebody, and he managed to continue the nation of Amalek. Because of that, Shaul was removed from being the king. Shaul was so ashamed of what he did that it says that when at a later date, Shaul went to a soothsayer. You know what a soothsayer is? Somebody that does like sorcery, like a what's it called? Like a seance, you know?
Like
so
magic.
Yeah, and they brought up the soul of Shemuel. They elevated him from the grave, and Shemuel was upset. He says, why are you doing this to me? And Shaul says, I want to know what's going on. How come I'm losing the kingdom? And Shemuel told them, you're going to lose the kingdom because of what you did with Amalek, but you're going to be Imi, with me. What is Imi with me? It means you're going to die, but you're going to be together with me, says Rashi, b'mechitzati, together in the same place as Olam Haba with me. How so? Because since he was so ashamed of the Avirah that he did, so that is the atonement for what he messed up, what he did wrong. So, bechavod, tremendous amount of stuff over here. Tfadda, as they say. Yeah. So that's the idea. And when a person experiences shame for what he did, he has a totally clean slate. Now they're totally new people. So they had to go through that to become totally new. Now, by the way, I saw an interesting explanation based off of this. It says later in the Parashat, when Yaakov Avinu finds out that Yosef is still alive, the first thing he does in Israel, he goes, he takes animals, he slaughters them as sacrifices to Hashem. But it says only Yaakov did that. So the Mefarshim ask, well, what about the rest of the brothers? Guys, you have your brother is the king. Where are you and your sacrifices? So the answer is because it's only a 6-day journey back from Egypt to Israel, 6.5. They just died. You can't bring a sacrifice if you're tameh, if you're impure. So they weren't. That's from the Sefer Pilpula Charifta. Very nice. But the point is they had died, and you can't bring a sacrifice if you're still impure within 7 days. Okay, so that's the incredible moment where Yosef revealed himself. By the way, it's important to know, the Mefarshim explain that this really is it's foreshadowing when HaKadosh Baruch Hu ultimately will reveal himself to the world. This is a very important point, just so we should all know. A lot of times a person goes through things in his lifetime. He doesn't understand why he got stabbed in the back by somebody that he trusted. He doesn't understand why he had to go through this and that type of suffering. He doesn't understand why this happened and that happened. You look at a pandemic. Why did this have to happen? Why are all the prices going up? Why is this and this? All these different things that you don't know. It's very confusing. A person goes through so many things in life, and you're like, what's going on? And then one day, all of a sudden, HaKadosh Baruch Hu goes, I'm Hashem. He reveals himself to all of us. That's when Mashiach comes. And at that moment, every single thing that you ever had a question about will become clear. Why did we have to go through Spanish Inquisition? Why do we have to go through a Holocaust? Why do we have to go through pogroms? Why do we have to have this happen and this? All the big questions. Look, that's exactly what happened with the brothers. The brothers are standing here again before Yosef. And they're saying, my God, we have no idea why we're here. We didn't steal anything. We came, we paid for our food. We took it. Well, all of a sudden they put money back in our bags. We brought the money back. We left. We're framed. They put this cup in our bag, said we stole it. Why are we here? We should be back in Israel with our father. Everything should be good. Why are we going through this? And then all of a sudden Yosef goes, oops, takes off the mask. Says, Ani Yosef, I am Yosef. That's why you had to go through all this. Because I needed to see that you guys stick up for your little brother Binyamin. And you're not going to feed him to the dogs like you did me. I want to see that you did teshuvah. And all of a sudden everything became clear and they were so ashamed. But that's a foreshadowing for when Hashem reveals himself to the world and says, all of this was me. And it becomes clear why all of these things had to happen. All the terrible suffering people have gone through. They needed to go through that for whatever reason. We have no idea why, but it eventually will become clear one day. That's the idea. That's really what's going on over here. The Chafetz Chaim points that out. So here's a very interesting point. So he says to them, I am Yosef. And then they start they're terrified, they're scared from him. And he says to them, Ani Yosef, ha'od avichai, is my father still alive? Bear in mind this question. What are you asking if your father's still alive? They told you 20 times he's still alive. Why is he asking this again? That's one question. They couldn't respond to him. They were terrified from his face. Now, he then says to them, come close to me, Vayigash, and then they come close to him. We have to analyze every little step over here very carefully. First of all, step one is like this. You have to understand that Yosef at this point put himself in grave danger. I'd like to explain why. Welcome, Joe.
Why grave danger?
Why grave danger? Let me explain. It says that Yosef at this point is all alone.
Yeah.
It says that he told everybody, leave. Hotziu kol ish me'alai. Get everybody out. He's got his secret service there. He's got his guards. He's got everybody. He says, everybody out. Just me and them. Now, why? Because he knows what he's about to do. And he knows the shame that it's about to bring on them. So what he does is, instead of embarrassing them in front of people, he takes everybody out. Now understand that the person he's dealing with right now is Yehuda. Yehuda is the leader of all the brothers. He's the king of all the different tribes. Yehuda at this point has told him that I have made a promise to my father that I'm bringing back Binyamin, who you just put in jail for allegedly stealing the cup. Because I made a promise to my father that if I don't bring him back, then I'm not going to have anything in this world or in Olam Haba. Now, why is that so important? Because when somebody makes a statement like that, what he's essentially telling you is, at this point, I've got nothing to lose. Because if I don't come back with Binyamin, I don't have this world, and I don't have Olam Haba either. So you're dealing with somebody who has nothing to lose. There's no one more dangerous than somebody who has nothing to lose.
And Yehuda.
Yeah, exactly. And anyway, Gur Al Yehuda, Yaakov says, he's like a lion. He's very powerful.
Didn't he told Yaakov, if I don't come, you can kill my sons?
That was Reuven.
Oh,
That was Reuven. So here, Yehuda is saying, Ki kamocha keparo. He says, at this point, I've got nothing to lose. So the first one that's going to go is you, Yosef. Now, he doesn't know it's Yosef. It's the second to the king guy that keeps on bringing us back here. I don't know what's going on, but he keeps on bringing us back. He says, you're the first one to go. I might die along the way, but I don't care. I've got nothing to lose at this point. So Yosef realizes that he's in danger. That's why it says, V'lo yachol Yosef leitapek. He can't hold it in anymore. He has to act right away. Not only emotionally he needs to act, but he has to act right away, because if not, he's going to die.
I think leitapek is more emotion.
I know, but that's what I'm trying to say. That's the simple meaning. Leitapek means he's emotionally, he can't hold it in. But on a practical level, he actually must act right now. That's the point. So over here, by taking everybody out to protect the dignity of the brothers, he's actually risking his own life. But he says it's worth it in order to protect their dignity, because if I reveal myself in front of everybody, then that's going to be very embarrassing to them. So he is right now doing something very, very, very noble to protect them while risking himself, because they might attack him and he's got nobody. Now, even still, he then, after revealing himself, tells the brothers, come close to me. Why does he tell them to come close? Because now he knows that people are by the door listening. He knows it's a very interesting situation right now that everyone's curious about. So he has a talk with the brothers. He says, I am Yosef, and this is a very important moment. But then he says, come close. And all the Mefarshim point out over here, whoever you want, the Ramban, the Chizkuni, or Chaim HaKadosh, they all say, the Kliyakar, come close. Why? Because now he's going to tell them, Ani Yosef asher machartem oti, that you sold me as a slave. And he knew that people are listening over there, and he didn't want them to hear that either. He said, come close. I'm Yosef, that you guys sold me as a slave. I know the whole thing because it was really me. That's what he's trying to tell them. And then it says something even more interesting. He showed them his Brit Milah. Now the question is, what for? So the simple understanding is because that's how they know that he's Jewish. Who else has a Brit Milah other than people who are Jewish? So the Farshim actually ask on this a question. They say, but Avraham had other children too. Avraham had Bnei Ishmael and had Bnei Keturah. They also have Brit Milah. So Maran Achidah says a very interesting thing. Big tzaddikim have the ability to see not only a circumcision, but to see the name of Shin Dalid Yud Shakai on the circumcision. The name of God that attaches itself to the circumcision when a person keeps his Brit Milah holy. The name of Hashem, the signature of Hashem is there. And a tzaddik can see it.
Are we allowed to ask questions?
What?
Is this a question interactive or no?
If it's related, yeah. Go.
Yeah, I feel like when a person goes to the mikveh, they should avoid all costs. Like they should cover and not to look. And we're not tzaddikim, but does it mean if there's a room full of tzaddikim, they can?
No. So actually, it's funny. The truth of the matter is that no. What it says is that a person should be very proud of his Brit Milah. It says that he shouldn't. It's when it actually says when you go, you shouldn't. It's a funny thing. It says that it should be, now certain places have, for practical reasons, they say cover up. Okay, follow the rules, no problem. But no, actually, it says that it should be very proud of it. Yeah, because God forbid because God forbid not to, because it used to be that people, because everybody else around us, they did not have Brit Milah, so people would be embarrassed to go because we had public bathhouses and all that. It wasn't like you had a private shower. People would, So in order not to have that feeling, the Chazal said the person should be very proud of the Brit Milah and shouldn't be embarrassed of it. That's a very important thing. It's a very big issue. It used to be people. The Rambam talks about a prohibition of being moshech orlato, which means that certain people did something to physically alter their appearance in order that they should look not circumcised. That's a grave sin. They did something to appear as if they never got a circumcision. They pulled up their skin that it should look like it wasn't circumcised. So that's a very grave sin because you are trying to show that you don't have the Brit Milah. But at any rate, the point is that Yosef asked them to come closer because, again, he didn't want to say something that would be heard by other people. Because imagine that people would hear that these individuals sold their brother, and this is what they do to their own brother, and now they're coming to live with us. Imagine what they're going to do to us. So, who wants that? Exactly. So therefore, Yosef kept it very quiet, but had them come close. Now, the key is over here to understand that for the longest time, the brothers and Yosef had a very big disconnect between themselves. Meaning, everything, I'll give you an example. I once saw in a magazine, he says, she hears. Husband and wife. He says one thing, she hears something else. She says something, he hears something else. Like, for example, if let's say the wife says something like, let's say the wife is a working wife, and she says, I wish I could buy this and that, whatever. So the husband, in that very moment, because men have this feeling of like we need to be, the providers and this and that. Men here, they interpret that statement of the wife as, you're the reason why I'm not a stay-at-home mom. You know what I'm saying? Certain statements that a woman could say, a man will interpret it a certain way. Let's say a husband says, how come this is on the floor? So now the wife all of a sudden interprets that to mean, you're a terrible wife, the house is not properly taken care of. You say one thing, she says something, she hears something totally different. That's exactly what happened with Yosef and the brothers. Yosef never meant, many Mefarshim explain it this way, Yosef never meant anything bad for his brothers. Remember the story. What was the problem originally? Yosef goes ahead and tells Yaakov, the father, the brothers are doing very bad things. I don't understand why they're doing this. They're eating parts of an animal that while the animal is still alive, they're calling they're calling the sons of Bilhah and Zilpah slaves, right? When they're our brothers, I think they're doing forbidden things with ladies. And he goes and he gives a negative report to the father. Now they interpret this as Yosef is trying to get us to be sidelined. Abraham had two sons, Yitzchak and Ishmael. Ishmael is off, Yitzchak is the continuation. Yitzchak had two sons, Yaakov and Esav. Esav is off, Yaakov is the continuation. They viewed it as Yaakov has all these kids, right? 12 tribes, and Yosef is the favorite, and the rest are out. They're out of the picture. So he's giving the father bad reports. They're looking at it as he's trying to get us out of here. And he's going to be the continuation. And look at what he had in his dream. He comes up one day, he says, I have a dream. What's the dream? I saw the sun, the moon, and I saw 11 stars bowing down to me. I was in the middle. Look what he's saying. He's saying that they are all going to bow down to me, right? So he's actually saying, he's not even hiding it. So in their mind, Yosef is coming and he's trying to kick them out of the picture and be the main guy. Just like Ishmael and Avraham and Yitzchak, and just like Esav and Yaakov. That's what they're going to do to me, right? That's what each one said it to himself. So now, what really was going on? What was actually happening? It was misunderstood. Yosef never meant to do that to them. Yosef, the opposite. What is he telling them? He says, I had a dream. In my dream, you guys are all stars. You guys are all leaders, all tribes. Yes, you have to bow down to me for something, but that's not the point. I'm trying. You guys are the creme de la creme. So he's going to his father, that his father should go and rebuke them, because this is not the right way for people that are supposed to be the leaders of Klal Yisrael to act. He's trying to raise them up. He's trying to make them the best that they can be. It might not be the most comfortable thing, the way that he did it, but his intentions are pure. All along, he says one thing, they interpret it a totally different way. He's always being misunderstood. That's the key. Always. And it doesn't stop. Over here in this parashat, it's the same thing. We asked the question. He says, Ani Yosef, I'm Yosef. Ha'od avi chai. Is my father still alive? Why is he asking that? You know that he's still alive. Explains the Kli Yakar. It's again a question that he's asking, and he means one thing, and the brothers totally misinterpret it. What was he trying to say? He thought that when they said, my father is still alive, that their father is alive, and he's old, and he's in the land of Israel, he thought that they're just saying it so that he will have mercy on them, and he'll give them food, but it could be that in reality, he's dead. They might be playing games. So now you know him, Yosef. Oh, the Vichai, is my dad still alive? Honestly, tell me the truth. Is he still around or no? Were you playing games or is it for real? Says the Kli Yakar, that was his question. You know how they interpreted it? They interpreted it by saying, Nivhalu mipanav, they were so ashamed. They thought that he was saying, Avi, he's my dad. You know why he's my dad and not your dad? Because if you would do such a thing to your own brother, you're causing him so much pain, so much suffering. How dare you call him your father? He's my father, he's not your father. And they were shocked, blown away. You understand? It's a lifetime of Yosef saying one thing, meaning one thing, and them totally misunderstanding what he's saying. All the time. Next, what does he do? He says, don't worry. It was all Hashem. I'm going to take care of you. Hashem sent me here in order to provide for you. Look, I'm second to the king. You guys will have food. You'll have where to live. And don't worry, I'll give you a separate place. You won't have to live amongst all the goyim. I'll take care of everything you need. You're good. You know what they interpreted it? They said, he's going to take care of us as long as dad is still alive. But once dad is dead, we're done with it. He's going to kill us. As long as Yaakov, our father, is alive, he won't want to give him pain. He's not going to hurt us. But once Yaakov passes on, he's going to kill us. Completely misunderstanding him all the time. Every step of the way. He says one thing, he doesn't mean it. It means something else. He's trying to, give over these dreams. He wants to get us. It's a big problem. And that's why later on, when Yaakov dies, they said, that's it. Not this week's parasha, next week's parasha. Yaakov Avinu passes away. They come and they say, okay, we're going to be your slaves. Anything you want, we'll do. Because they figure that's it. We're done for. Yosef says, guys, I told you, I'm here in order to protect you, to serve you. I'm here to do good for you. And they still didn't believe it. And Yosef said to them, guys, let me explain something to you. Think about it logically, he said. He had to come up with an explanation. So he says to them, it says Rashi, you guys are the proof that I'm not a slave. Remember, they sold me here as a slave. I was a slave by somebody's house. You're the proof that it's not a real thing, that I'm a free man. You're the proof that I have brothers, that I have a family, and I'm not just some guy from out of nowhere. What do you think people would say if I killed my own brothers? You think that would be something that people would take okay? He had to give them a logical reason. Only then did they agree. Yeah, you know what? He's saying something that makes sense.
Because
So
they didn't see far as he maybe.
It's a lifetime of being misunderstood. And that's the saddest part. You're saying one thing, you're trying to convey a certain message, they totally misunderstand you. Now the problem is, at the same time, he wasn't careful with how he conducted himself. And if there was an issue, he shouldn't have gone to Yaakov Avinu and make it look like I'm going behind your back to stab you in the back. He should have gone straight forward and said, guys, you're doing A, B, C, open communication. And they would have told him, no, I'm not. We're doing this because that's this explanation, that because of that explanation, and they would have had a discussion. Thank you so much. So the fact that he went to Yaakov Avinu originally and kind of made it look like a behind the back move, that gave them a little bit of a scare. But it's a big mistake. So it's so important for us to understand from here that many times in our own lives, in our own relationships, there are moments where somebody says one thing and you completely take it the wrong way. And that's not what the person meant. It's very dangerous. You always have to think to yourself, wait, maybe it's not like that, and keep the lines of communication open and be upfront and say, hey, what do you mean? What about this? It's okay. As long as you're open, you understand what is exactly going on. Now, amen.
I want to put another thing. When you say Yaakov, obviously Rivka gave Yaakov, meaning instead of Sadiq got the bracha.
Yes.
So think about Joseph's brothers thinking, he's doing something to get like him.
Exactly. That's exactly right.
The bracha instead of the seven, something happened. He's trying to get something here too.
That's exactly what they thought.
He's a shoshelet.
Right.
It already happened. They already knew about it. Like something,
100%. What they didn't realize is that now is different. Yaakov Avinu was the point at which we stopped having avot. Yaakov Avinu already is the father of the 12 tribes. It's a different story now.
They didn't know that.
I understand. But that's the point. That there was they misunderstood. Again, it's misunderstanding after another misunderstanding, and that's the problem. Now, the key over here, guys, which I want to explain from this parasha, is a point that's brought out from the Shalah Kadosh, the holy Shnei Luchot HaBrit. And what he says is the following. He says, look at what happened next. Everybody starts, right, to get emotional. And Yosef goes and kisses everybody. He hugs them and he kisses them. Now, these are the people who sold him, who kidnapped him, sold him into slavery, put him away from his father for 22 years, went through so much suffering. And he is the one who is hugging and kissing them. Says the Shalah Kadosh. You have to understand, just how much a person needs to go out of his way to forgive people who did him wrong. So important. We tend to hold grudges. We tend to say, this guy wronged me, and therefore I cut ties. Why should I have any relationship with such a person? This guy, misbehaved. So that's it. I'm not calling him, not talking to him. Enough is enough. And that's that. Goodbye. Yosef did everything in his power to forgive them and to embrace them. You know how hard that is? You know what it means? Somebody kidnapped you, sold you into slavery, to the middle of nowhere. I'm all alone with nobody. You know what it means? What kind of backstabbing that is? And I should forgive that person? Amazing. Yosef managed to do that.
But yeah, you know what happened here, I guess.
It would. If you're still a human being, you do that to me and I'm going to forgive you? It's a crazy thing. Think about it. So how does somebody get to that level? How does somebody, we actually learned it in the Mishnah this morning. We learned this morning in the Mishnah, Masechet Bava Kama. We learned that a person should be easy to forgive. A person should not be cruel when somebody asks for forgiveness. How do we know? Because it says that Avimelech took Abraham's wife Sarah because they were in a place that people liked pretty ladies. And if they see somebody who has a pretty wife, they have no problem shooting him and taking his wife, especially if she's somebody who's good enough to be the king, the queen. So he knows that. So if he says, I am the husband of this beautiful woman, they're going to shoot him. So he said, she's my sister. So he's compelled, being that there's a famine in Israel, he has to go down there, and he has no choice but to lie and say she's his sister. Abimelech takes her, and Hashem wipes out Abimelech's household from children. Nobody, not his daughter, not his other wives, nobody's having kids because of Sarah being in that house. And at that point, Hashem goes to Abimelech and says, Abimelech, you have a married woman in your house. He says, I didn't know that. He said, she's my sister. And Abimelech says, Hashem, you're going to harm me? It was totally a mistake. So Hashem says, I know it was a mistake, but give her back. And then if he prays for you, I'll listen to his prayer that everybody should be healed. Now, let me tell you, if it was me, and God forbid somebody took my wife into his house, you know what I'd pray for?
No.
I'd pray that he should fall off a cliff and have a miserable, terrible, suffering death. That's what I would pray for. Okay? Now, what Avraham Avinu prayed for was that everybody should have a refuah shlema, and they should be fine. Okay? So he got his wife back and he prayed for them. Says the Mishnah, you see from here, a person has to be quick to forgive. Now again, forgive. Why should I forgive? Imagine a piece of garbage like that. That anybody who is married to a pretty woman, he's gonna take his wife. Really? Doesn't work like that. But that's what it is, right? Forgive him. That's what the Mishnah said. So
should take everybody's one?
No, but somebody who looked really good, he would do it. Yeah, he's not taking anybody. He wants to. Needs to be, Yeah. So the idea is, gentlemen, that a person has to be quick to forgive. Now, no, this is a really difficult thing. So says the Shla Kadosh, how does a person do that? How do you do that? Somebody damages you, somebody does wrong to you, somebody harms you, and you don't expect that from one of your own people, especially. How do you forgive? The Shla Kadosh says a very important mashal, but it's a true mashal. When the Torah says that you shall love your fellow like you love yourself, what is the meaning of that? The meaning of that is that you have to understand that every single Jew is connected to one another. We all have one big neshama that attaches all of us together. We're all one. We might not see it, we might not feel it, but we are united in our souls. We're all attached together. In the same way, says the Shalach Kadosh, if somebody, God forbid, is making a salad and he chops a little bit too hard and he cuts his hand with the knife. So now his hand hurts, it's bleeding. Does one hand go ahead and say, well, the right hand cut my left hand, so the left hand now is going to take a knife and cut the right hand back, right? What do you mean? It's not fair. This one cut over here, so I cut this one. It's absurd, obviously. Why? Because it's the same body, it's the same person. Same idea over here. When a person does harm to another Jew, or a Jew does harm to another Jew, causes him pain, causes him suffering, for me to want to harm that guy back is like cutting my own hand. We're the same. He's me, I'm him. Our neshamot are together, united. It's a spiritual reality that we just aren't aware of. I'll never forget, I once saw a terrible, terrible case in Israel of a person that simply, he was bringing somebody else's child home, and or a bunch of kids, and one kid stayed in the car, and it was a very, very hot day, and he forgot about him, and that kid basically baked in the car, and he died. Terrible, terrible negligence, terrible, awful suffering. And the father of that kid, the grandfather of that kid was asked, do you hate that man who did that? He was a Hasidic Jew, the grandfather. And he said, no. He says, do you want to see him suffer, press charges? He said, no. He said, obviously it was a mistake. He didn't mean to do that. He said, but what do you mean? Don't you want to see justice done? He said, I don't understand. Exactly what I told you. He says, when one hand gets cut, does one hand go and cut the other hand? Doesn't make sense. Again, just to understand the concept. Because that is something which is, it's so hard, so devastating. The loss of a child, the loss of a grandchild. But at the end of the day, yeah, my hand is cut. It hurts like crazy. It's so painful. It's so devastating. It's terrible. But what do I gain by cutting that other hand? That's the way Yosef looked at it. Yes, I went through suffering. Yes, I was kidnapped. Yes, I was a slave. Yes, I was away from my father 22 years. It was awful. It was devastating. But what benefit am I going to get by harming my brothers now? What good will come out of it? It's so important for us to understand the concept. And that'll help us a lot in life, because a lot of times people do things to you that you wish you never had to go through. People misbehave, they wrong you. God forbid, I don't wish that on anybody, but it happens. So how do you get through that? The answer is you say, this is for me to go and to do back to him. What good will that do? What will I benefit from that? And that's what Yosef did. It's so important for us to understand that. I want to point out one more point that was a beautiful chidush that I saw today. So it says Yosef was very wise, Baruch Hashem. He told everybody to store up all of their wheat, store up all of their food. The years of famine come, and we have food, we have grains, we have everything that we need. Now there was a certain point where there was no more money. Everybody they spent every last penny. They couldn't make any money because of the fact that they had no way of making any money. There's no food, there's no economy, there's no nothing. They sold everything they have, and the government bought it all. So at a certain point, they had to sell their properties too. They start selling their houses, their fields, everything that the government's buying and paying them with food. Okay? So now it says that there was one section in the land of Egypt that the government refused to buy it. Exactly. This was the land of the Kohanim. I'll read it to you inside. It says like this. It says that this one area of the Kohanim, and which Kohanim? Jewish Kohanim? There are no Kohanim, Jewish Kohanim yet. The tribe of Levi didn't have Kohanim. We're talking about the Avodah Zarah Kohanim, the Egyptian Kohanim, which, that they're worshiping idols. That land, it says, Yosef did not buy it, refused to buy it. So I always wondered why. What is this kavod Yosef is giving the Goyish Kohanim?
They would brainwash everybody against them.
That what? Oh, because
Those Kohanim,
right,
Egyptians,
right,
go out and brainwash all the Egyptians against him.
So he wants to placate them.
This guy can
Nice
take
answer.
our
Nice answer.
Take our money, take our everything.
Very nice answer. That's a good idea. I saw.
So much power.
Yes, they definitely did. They definitely do have a lot of power. But I saw a different answer from the Targum Yonatan ben Uziel. This is a very interesting insight I had no idea about. So Potiphar comes home and his wife accuses Yosef of trying to seduce her. The Midrash adds another point that the Torah doesn't say. The Midrash says that she pointed to the bed and she showed him there's like a kind of like white, whatever, murky liquid over there. She said that was from Yosef. She accused him and she said, there's the evidence. So look, you see, that's what he did. Potiphar wasn't so quick to buy it. He approached, says the Midrash, Kohanim from the idol worshippers to come and give him advice to check it out. So they told him the following. They said, heat it up. If it melts and goes into the sheets, it's from Yosef. If it starts to cook, that means it's the white of an egg. And it's not from Yosef. He heated it up and it started to cook. It was the white of an egg. So Yosef remembered that because of them, Potiphar knew the truth, that it wasn't really him.
And he stayed alive.
Now Potiphar threw him in jail anyway. Why? Because he figured that if I let this kind of thing fly, then other people might try to mess around with her too. But I have to show something. I have to do something to show that this is, that people shouldn't try and do stuff. So he threw him in jail. But he knew that it wasn't exactly what she said. He knew that she was playing games. And Yosef knew that his fate could have been a lot worse had they not done what they did. Says the Targum Yonatan in this week's Parashat, you want to know why Yosef didn't buy the land of the Kohanim, of the Goyim, of the idol worshippers? Because it was Akarat Tov. He was thanking them for what they did to him.
Wow, it's a chidush.
It's a big chidush. It's a nice chidush. I never heard that before. It's Targum Yonatan.
How do you
What?
From the direct translation or the commentary when you say Targum?
The translation of Yonatan ben Uziel inserts all of this into the story.
Oh, it's just Akarat Tov on the.
It was because he was thanking them for the fact that they had saved him from having a much worse fate with that little piece of advice that they gave Potiphar. It's amazing. She was very cunning what she wanted to do over there, but it was
Wow.
plan was spoiled. Gentlemen, we'll call it a night for tonight. Chazakim Ruchim. Thank you for joining us, everybody on Zoom. Thank you for joining us. Zashem, we continue next week. Quote 2.